Good afternoon everyone, it's Louise here from Eleanor Grace. So I promised you a little video on doing the bullion stitch, or a bullion knot sometimes it's called. Now this is a bit of a fiddly stitch, but once you get it, it has so many applications. It's such a lovely stitch. And I will say from the start, it's one of those things that I don't think you can learn and then not use for a while and then try and pick it up again, although you'll have this video to watch, of course. It's something that I think when you first learn it, it's really good to try and use it and to practice regularly with it until you really get it. And once you get it, oh, you'll love this stitch, you really will. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. These ones are a bit small. So these are bullion roses, which I've done, as you can see, in a very fine, this is a cotton pearl A12, so it's very tiny. I mean, you can see the size of my fingernail. That's my index finger, so it's not huge, but these are lovely stitches to do a little rose out of bullion stitches. Is really, well, it's something I use a lot, as you will see. There's another different heart here. Again, I've used the bullion stitches there. Now this one is I think is a cotton pearl A12, so it's slightly bigger. And that's what I'm going to show you with, because the 12 cotton pearl 8, sorry, because the 12 is too small. But as you can see, it's something I use a lot. I've got another couple of examples here for you. So it's on this side, another slightly larger bullion rose there as well, and I've also used it here as a little zigzag edging to a piece of lace that had that sort of design on it already. And you can see this is in a cotton pearl 8. As you can see, it's got so many applications to it, and it's a lovely textural stitch. I mean, it feels gorgeous. They feel really nice. These ones I've done in 2 different colours, so you probably can't see. We've got a very dark day here today, so I'm very sorry, the lighting's probably not great, but it's done in a soft pink and a soft corally pink. You might just be able to see the distinction between them. Yeah, so I'll show you how to make a bullion rose as well, and you can also make them separately, as you can see here. And the final one I'm going to show you is again a tiny one. These here, these purple flowers, it was the pattern of the fabric that I just followed with the chain stitch and with the French knots and the bullions. So these are very tiny, as you can see, really teeny tiny. And yes, did my eyesight in a bit that. You know, you don't have to do it this small. A cotton pearl 8 or, you know, a few strands of embroidery floss would be fine. So I would say get a practice pad. If you don't have one, or you're new, you don't know how to make one, then I have got a video on how to make a practice pad. What I would say, the one thing I would really advise, and we were discussing this on the group today, on the Facebook group Slow Stitching by Hand with Eleanor Grace, we were saying get the proper equipment, get what you can afford. So if you can spend a few more pennies, or whatever your currency is, then do buy a good quality of the basics if you can, needles, pins, etc. So for this, all you need is a milliner's needle. I'm going to have to unthread this. Hopefully I can thread it back on as well. So a milliner's needle, as you can see, is quite long. It's quite long and fairly fine, and it has got a sort of slightly rounded top to it. So these are milliner's needles that I've just purchased not that long ago, and it was a reasonable company. You know, it was a really good quality one. So I think it was something like John James or possibly Clover, but I tend to mostly buy John James and some others. So I'm going to try and thread this needle again now. I knew I would probably curse myself. There we go. So it's not got a very big hole, it's slightly rounded, the milliner's needle hole, and you obviously want to start off with a knot. So I'm just going to do another one, because that one is a slightly small, and I can just see that popping through. Okay, so let me turn this around and we will have a look. at how to do the stitch. Now, the one thing to think about with bullion is it looks harder than it is. You have to remember you're only doing 4 stitches and you're only coming in and out of 2 holes. So you can't really go too far wrong, hopefully, once you learn. So you want to think about where you're placing it. Now, if I'm thinking about making a rose, or if I'm thinking about making a single stitch, I need to ensure that I come up at one of the edges of the stitch. And if I'm making a rose, I want to come up in the centre of where I want the rose to be. So that's what I'm going to start off with here. Going to act as if this is my front. So you just come through with your knotted piece of thread. Now, if you remember what I said, we've got 2 holes and 4 stitches, and that's all there is to it. So what you want to do is now think about the length of your stitch. Now, if you do a really big one, you're going to find that the number of times you have to wrap it is quite excessive. And also, if you're not used to it, then you're going to get wonky, wobbly stitches. So I would say start smaller, and wherever you go back into the fabric, that is the length of your stitch from that to there. So I'm going to go fairly small here. So you go back in, but you don't push through. You come back straight up through the same hole, or as near to it as you can get. So as you can see, that was coming up was stitch 1, going down is stitch 2, and I come through here. And the reason you want a milliner's needle is it's quite long, so you then want to start wrapping. So let me hold on to this. What I do is I tend to hold on to the needle as I'm doing this, and then I'm left-handed generally, but I wrap with my right hand. So I don't know. It's just the way I do it. So I'm going to wrap it a few times. Now what you want to do is stop after a few wraps and start pushing it down to make it neat. And then you will see when it is nearly the size of the stitch that you're going to do. You don't want to wrap more times than the size of this bit here, which is the size of your stitch. So I'd say I'm about there actually. I might do one more wrap. If you do too many, you're going to get a sort of slightly wobbly stitch. Now, what I'm going to do is swap back to my non-dominant hand. So I put my thumb on it with my right hand, which is my non-dominant hand. I stitch with my left, and then I push it through. So you haven't done any more stitches, you're just pushing through there, and that brings you up to point 3. And you hold your thumb down as long as you can, and then when you take it off, just keep pulling gently. When you take it off, you'll see that you'll get this sort of stitch that wants to come back on itself, and it's telling you where it wants to go. It really wants to go back in here. And so all you do is give a bit of tension on here, neaten up the stitch with your thumb, just push it down a bit, and you'll see it's ready to go back in. Let me move this loose thread out the way, and I go in again at the same point, or as near as you can. Ideally in the same point, it does look better, but if you're doing a lot of them, it doesn't matter so much. And you will see that I've made a bullion. So I'm going to do that again. The other thing you will notice with bullions is they're very malleable. You can move them left and right. So if you're making a circle, you might want to push it a certain way and then carry on that way. So before I make my circle, I need to make another stitch actually. So I'm actually going to do this as I would do when I'm making the circle. So if that's the centre of my circle roughly, what you want to do then is come up very near to it and make a stitch. What I do is I make stitches that sort of slightly wrap around. So I'm going to come to about here, which is around the bottom of that stitch, and make my second bullion stitch. So I'm going to go in there and come out at this point here that I started off with. Hopefully you can see that all right. Even my lights are not really helping with the weather today. So I'm going to start wrapping. So I'm going to hold on to the needle with my thumb and start wrapping. Now you might wrap the other way to me. You might wrap under like that. I do it this way. Whether or not it's correct, I'm not sure, but it's the way I like to do it. So again, you start neatening up the stitches when you think you might be near to the right sort of size. I think that is right. So again, I'm going to swap. Yeah, I've kept the tension here, you'll see. So that's the thing. You don't want to lose the tension on the on these that you've wrapped on the needle, because then all is lost. So I'm putting my non-dominant hand there. Just going to make sure that doesn't pull out, and then push through with my dominant hand, to my left, and I'm keeping my thumb on it and tightening it as I go. As you take your thumb off, you will see that it starts, if you keep pulling, it will just start naturally to get tighter. You don't want to really pull too tight, but if you just start pulling it, it'll start coming back on itself, and it will show you where it wants to go in. So the stitch should finish about here, which is where I started, and you go in like that. So if I'm making a rose, what I will continue to do is build around that. So I'd probably go here now and make it come around here, and then I'd probably go just work my way around it and just make all these stitches in a circle. I might do a separate video for that. I want to just show you the technique again, just so it's clear, well, as clear as it can be on this grey day. So you come up for stitch 1, you go down for stitch 2. Now that's going to be the length of my stitch, is going to be, let me get that out the way a little bit so you can see. That's going to be the length of my stitch from where the thread is there to where I choose. So again, don't make it too big, because you'll make a rod for your own back. Then I hold on, first of all I hold on with my dominant hand, and then I just wrap a few times. If you quite quickly get used to it, and when you're doing something, when you're doing a lot of them, you just get to know how many wraps are right, and it will depend. It will depend on what thread you're using. If you're using cotton perlé and you're not making a huge stitch, you're probably going to do 4 to 6 wraps, something like that. But do a few, tidy them up, and then see, does that look about right for the length of stitch you've got there, which that does. That looks about the same length there. So again, I'm keeping the tension on here. That is the most important part of the whole stitch. So I've come up at 3, going to hold that with my non-dominant hand. You might want to do it the other way around, and I pull through with my dominant hand. I keep pulling that way until I release my thumb, and as soon as I release my thumb, I come back on myself, because that's where the stitch is heading, and keep tidying it up and pulling a little bit, giving a little bit of tension there. Then you're left with your little tail, and you go down for point 4. So as you can see, you've got 2 places where you're going in and out, and you're going in and out of them in order. So you're coming up, you're going down and through and back up again, you're wrapping, and then you're going back down when you've pulled the stitch tight. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you'll have a go. I'll make one more just to see, and to give you time to practice. So do get your practice pads out. I'm going to make a longer one just to show you. They can look quite different. So as I say, the longer they are, the more difficult they are to control. So I've gone up here, I've gone through. I'm now going to hold the needle, and I'm going to wrap. Let's see, this is a big stitch, so as you can see, that is not going to cover all of this space, and all you're going to have left is a bit of a messy stitch that's going to be pulled too tight because it's trying to stretch across the space. That's probably too many, so I'm going to go back. That's about right. So again, I've got the tension on here. Most important, put your thumb on it, push through, hold it the whole way, and keep it going the direction it was going until you release your thumb. Then, as you can see in this case, because it's longer, it starts to look a bit messy. All you do is you keep pulling, and you keep pushing or sort of fussing with it, if you like, and then it starts to lay flat. And so I'm going to go back down there, and I've got another little baby slug. But it's a lovely stitch, as I say. It can be used for all sorts of things, and if you want to start trying to make a it is easier, I think, in cotton pearl. I mean, you know me, I always use cotton pearl. I do sometimes use embroidery floss, but for something like this, it's having the single thread, I think, is really useful, and it helps keep its shape. So I'm just going to show you what I did with these again, so you can see them. So here I've got, that's a cotton pearl 12, so very small stitches. You can see the size of those stitches is just a few millimeters. So I might be only wrapping 3 or 4 times with, you know, very thin thread, but it gives a very effective look, doesn't it? And this one, again, slightly bigger. These are done with cotton pearl 12, about 4 to 6, maybe sometimes 7 if I've done a slightly bigger stitch. But you will soon get to know, and if you do the measuring as I showed you, you will soon get to know how many wraps you really should have on there. And then it's on this side, these ones in the dual colours, in the pink and the coral. And then these single ones, and I love these. I think this is this is one of my favourite pieces I've made, but I think it's probably one of my favourite things I've ever done, is just used it in a different way. And I think, oh, why haven't I used that more? I should do that again. I really love it. And finally, little really fiddly diddly ones in cotton pearl 12. But they're very tactile, they're very malleable stitches. They roll this way and that. So if you make some, and say you're making a ribbon rose, and you've got a bit of a space, stick another one in there. It's quite, they move quite happily, so you can just move one out the way, get another one in there, and it will tidy it all up. So I really hope you have found that useful, and do let me know in the comments if you have a go. Do please come on the group. If you're not already in the group, it's Slow Stitching by Hand with Eleanor Grace. Just please do answer the questions, so I know that you're not a bot, and I'll let you straight in as soon as I can, obviously working UK hours. Yeah, and have a go. Let me know how you get on. I do hope this was helpful. And yeah, you've got it here now forever to watch again. If I get a better day with weather, I might re-record it again, because I don't know how this is going to come out. But yeah, hope you all had a lovely Easter if you were celebrating, or hope you had a lovely weekend if not. And I'll see you here again soon. Bye.